This is 8 Minute Climate Fix, a podcast helping you understand the energy and climate challenge in just a few minutes. I'm your host, Paul Schuster. So this is the 5th episode of our little mini-series on sustainability and AI, and today we're going to talk about the technical infrastructure behind your AI query and how that may be changing. It's not just about data centers, and the implications have real effects on enterprise sustainability organizations. 8 minutes. It's how long it takes the sun to race to hit Earth, or how long I'm giving myself to believe in the U.S. World Cup soccer team this year. We're going to win the whole thing, baby. Let's get it on. Let's rewind a few years to when the AI boom was just starting to take off. At the time, a lot of our usage of compute was being done in the cloud. We had an enormous amount of data centers already built in the US, but built on the back of providing cloud-based remote services for companies and applications. It made a ton of sense that the first applications of AI tools would be hosted through these cloud providers. And in fact, our default lens for viewing AI infrastructure is still that cloud-based digital backbone. It's why we hear about data center build-out and energy consumption and electricity prices so much. It's because the industry continues to build large data centers to manage the growing demand for AI. But well, we're familiar with some of the limitations emerging in just building more and bigger data centers. Everything from resource availability to supply chain issues to permitting to affordability and others. There's a growing structural constraint on just how many new data centers can actually get built. But add to that AI doesn't operate like software as a service applications do. What worked well in a third-party hosted cloud-based data center may not work for AI. As a result, we're starting to see a few different AI infrastructure options emerging in the market, shifting away from traditional cloud-based services and into something else. And while the decision to move to these other models may be based on economics or latency or just plain speed to market, the implications from a sustainability perspective can be real and profound. Getting the CSO to be at the table when these decisions are being made is going to be important. First, let's not dismiss cloud hyperscaler inference anytime soon. It's still going to account for the majority of AI infrastructure in any reasonable future. From a sustainability perspective, well, we've discussed how difficult it is for organizations to wrap their head around the emissions related to this usage. For one thing, it falls firmly in the Scope 3 camp, and getting the data from suppliers to calculate carbon has proven to be tricky. But even so, Scope 3 is one of those areas of corporate emissions where targets are smaller or set way off into the future, maybe even ignored completely. And doing something about Scope 3 it's just tough. As long as cloud services remain in Scope 3, they're going to receive less scrutiny and less activity than other sources. However, other deployment models are emerging that may move AI emissions out of Scope 3 and into Scope 2 or even Scope 1. Take, for instance, on-prem owned data centers. Instead of purchasing compute from a third party, companies end up making the decision to own that infrastructure themselves. This actually makes a ton of economic sense based on the tokenomics of AI usage. Cloud-based services worked economically when scaling was based on marginal user. Increase the number of users and just add a couple more servers to handle the increased need. AI, though, is something else entirely. It's not just the number of users that is increasing, it's also the number of tokens per user that is growing. And that means that we're seeing capacity usage of cloud servers going from 20 to 25% to something over 70% for AI inference. That high-performance compute need changes the economics. It's no longer most economical to outsource digital compute. Owning and operating the GPUs yourself makes sense, to the tune of a payback period of less than 5 years. It also changes the sustainability equation, moving it out from Scope 3 and supplier-based emissions and into the more controllable Scope 2-based carbon. That may stress nearer-term Scope 2 commitments, but now CSOs have some tools to work with. REC purchases, PPAs, green power plans. Some other deployment models are emerging as well, including distributed inference operating at the edge. Think of these as smaller banks of 4 to 10 GPUs located at, say, a telecom tower where it can access fiber optic cabling. Much, much smaller overall compute sizing, but it comes with serious benefits in terms of cost, speed to interconnection, and reduced latency. These may be owned by a third party, Scope 3, so a lot of similar challenges exist to current cloud-based computing. But think of those challenges as exponentially scaled, as now you're not just managing emission factors and energy consumption at one site, but potentially at thousands. A sustainability office needs to understand the operational burden that this may place on their team. Or take it even further and think of the emerging deployment model where the AI inference is done at the device itself. Repetitive queries, small language model inference done at the phone or tablet or PC device edge. Talk about easy to get up and running, low cost, no permitting. The challenge, of course, is how much the edge AI models can really handle. One of the reasons why this model hasn't taken off quite yet, despite the stellar economics. Give it time, though, and as AI compute gets more efficient, we're likely to see more of these device edge deployments happening. Thinking about this from a sustainability perspective, these AI devices just made life a lot more complicated. The energy usage is still going to be there, but now it's masked and hidden under the energy usage of an individual device. Aggregate thousands of computers and phones, and the AI usage is still significant. It's just impossible to quantify. And frankly, it makes it real easy for sustainability offices to wipe their hands and say it's not their problem, especially if remote workers are the ones paying for the utility bills in the first place. You've effectively pushed emissions and cost onto your employees. There needs to be some solid thinking as to the implications of this. And then lastly, there is space-based compute, which I touched on a couple of weeks ago. Here, the unique challenge is the fact that the impact of orbital data centers is not in the power that they consume. In all respects, they're taking never-ending clean power from the sun to power these chips. Your Scope 2 just went down to zero. No, the real emissions impact is in the launch costs of these satellites in the first place. We've effectively traded Scope 2 emissions for life cycle emissions. Again, potentially pushing it into a different category, goal, and timeline. 5 different AI deployment models: cloud-based data centers, on-prem computing, distributed inference, device edge inference, and space-based data centers. Each of which is gaining momentum because of strong economic reasons, strong user reasons, strong access to compute, period, reasons. But they each have very different considerations around sustainability. Right now, these deployment decisions are being made by the CIO and the CFO. And as these emerging models become more prevalent, more and more companies are going to be shifting from the traditional cloud-based infrastructure to one of these different deployments. But the CSO absolutely has to be involved in that decision making. AI is becoming one of the largest contributors to a company's GHG profile, and one of the most powerful decisions a company can make towards controlling that emissions comes right here at the deployment stage. I'm Paul Schuster, and this has been your 8 Minutes.